Hey guys, we're going to go in depth a little more on some anatomical terms. Today we're looking at flexion versus extension. Simply put, and people probably mostly know the bicep curl, that is going to be arm flexion. So you're bringing the bones in your forearm closer essentially to the bones in your upper arm. That's flexion. And then going the other way around, you want to get them further apart from each other, you're going to extend at the arm. Same thing can be done in the squat. Hip flexion is what's going on at your hip crease. Bring your knee to your chest is flexion through the hip. You bring your knee bone closer to your torso. Knee flexion is bringing your heel to your butt. So then you can imagine as you're doing a squat, you're getting hip and knee flexion because you're bringing them together. When you stand up out of the squat, that's going to be extension of the hip and extension of the knee as you start to straighten your leg. Fairly straightforward. I want to go a little bit more in depth on completely locking out, especially as it pertains to the knee and the elbow, how that might be dangerous. And then I'm going to talk briefly about the spine. It gets a little wonky in terms of flexion extension. It's not as clear as bones or the joints getting closer together. So one, if you're thinking about doing presses, so overhead presses or overhead squats, you want to extend at the elbow so that you have a stable position for that weight to sit on, whether it's overhead squat or just a press overhead. One thing with that, and this only pertains to hypermobile athletes, is extending too far, just hanging on the joint, hanging on the bones. So if you're a hypermobile athlete, or if you notice that you have a slight overextension, by that I mean if you draw a straight line here, that line doesn't go all the way through, it ends up arcing down slightly. I'm not so bad, I can lock out, it's a straight line, but some athletes have a severe hyperextension where you can extend past neutral. What's wrong with that essentially is you're just hanging on the bones in your elbow, and sure, it might feel very stable, but there's no muscular dynamics involved and you're just hanging on the bones, which isn't the most ideal, especially when you have hundreds of pounds overhead. You can imagine you don't want your elbow or knee or anything to snap the other way. You may have seen some gruesome videos of people doing the leg press, and when they fully lock out their knees, and if they have a bit of hyperextension, bad things happen. So for the hypermobile athlete, as you extend your arm, as you extend your leg, as you extend your knee, you want to be able to have full control over that, so you just go into a straight line and you don't end up hyperextending, just hang on the elbow joint, hang on the knee. As it pertains to the knee, you should be able to have very, very slight degrees of hyperextension. So let's see if I can do this here. If you sit down on the ground and you have your knee here, if you squeeze your quad, you should be able to lift the heel off the ground in a very slight degree of hyperextension. If you're squeezing your quad and nothing's happening, that means you have really tight quads and you're not able to get that full expression of the knee. So quick test to see if you have tight quads. Sit down on the ground, squeeze your quads. If your heel pops off the ground, you're good to go. To a certain degree, if the heel comes flying off the ground when you squeeze your quad, you need to be very careful when you're coming out of squats. Make sure you just stand to straight and you don't just hang on the knee joint and overextend. If there's any questions about flexion and extension, let me know. I'm going to go in depth on the spine as it relates to flexion extension in a different video. Hope you guys like this. I'm going to keep them coming. Have a good day.